Meet the Majstorovic family. Mum, dad and 2 young kids in Melbourne's outer suburbs. And, just like every Australian family, their cost of living is rising, thanks, in part, to their power bills.
Budget's a thing, it's always tight from month to month, and I guess when the bill comes in for the electricity, it's always something you kind of go, wow, how can we kind of reduce this?
It really feels like it's increased this year. We've definitely thought about it a lot more than other years.
Electrician Dean Spicer is on his way to the Majstorovic's house to test their voltage.
Some of the readings are quite outrageous. They can be far too high, and most customers just are not aware of it, so nothing happens about it.
Come on in, mate.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Yeah, you too.
Come on through.
Thank you.
Australian households should get electricity with voltage within a range between 216 and 253 volts. But often what they're being sent is at the upper end and sometimes over the 253 volt limit, which can mean more electricity consumption.
Once an appliance reaches saturation, that high voltage transfers as heat, which is just money
down the drain.
Down the drain, effectively. Yeah, you're right.
In general terms, voltage is electrical pressure. It's the force that sends current from power stations through transmission lines to your home. In much of Australia, the voltages supplied to homes and businesses are generally at the higher end of what's allowed. This means many household appliances consume more electricity, pushing power bills higher, though it's impossible to say by how much.
And here's another issue that anyone with high voltage will relate to. Your light bulbs don't work.
Richard McIndoe spent years running one of the country's major electricity retailers, Energy Australia.
This happens once every 3 or 4 months. I'm changing the light bulbs in this light, and this is what drove me to look at voltage.
Even with his specialist understanding of the industry, he was surprised by the power usage in his own home. He now runs a company that promises to filter out extra voltage in people's homes and businesses.
I'm being force-fed more electricity than I need. Based on the voltage that I'm seeing here at 254 volts, I'm roughly paying about $1,200 more for my electricity each year than I need to. This is pervasive across the whole country. We have a major issue with regulating voltage across Australia, and it's getting worse.
The ABC asked 2 companies to take a snapshot of electricity meters across most of Australia. The first took readings from more than 12,000 sites and found in the middle of the day the average was almost 246 volts. The lowest readings were taken at night when solar panels aren't working. They were still almost 242 volts at the upper end of the range. Solar does boost voltage, but these readings show the underlying levels are already high. The second company that provided data to 730 had similar findings. Barely any individual meters were below 230 volts. At the heart of the debate is this. Australia has almost 2 million solar panels delivering extra voltage to the grid. The poles and wires companies say therefore solar is responsible for boosting voltage on a broad scale. But the underlying problem is the networks are already delivering voltage that's at the top end of the range, regardless of solar. And that's an expensive problem to fix. The poles and wires companies say it's challenging to keep voltages where they need to be.
If you have sustained voltages at a higher level relative to somewhere lower in the band, there will be a minimal effect on consumption and hence on power bills.
Can you quantify how big that effect might be?
That would depend on the voltage variation, so it's hard to pin that down.
Do you agree, though, that for a significant number of household appliances, supplying higher voltages will have an impact on the electricity those appliances consume?
When you have high voltages coming through the system on a sustained basis, it does have an effect on appliances. As does when you have low voltages coming through the system too often, that also has an effect on electric appliances.
Now testing this television and DVD player at 216 volts.
In this lab, scientists are testing how changes in voltage affect home appliances.
In general, it will reduce the life of appliances, but it's fairly uncertain to what degree. For instance, we know that incandescent light bulbs were very sensitive to voltage, and higher voltages would reduce their lifespan by quite a margin. The impact on electronic devices, I think, is still to be really quantified.
Electricity researcher Sean Elphick found voltages were over the limit for more than an hour a day at more than a quarter of the sites he surveyed.
The electricity network is a very large, very complicated system and a very reliable system most of the time as well, but changes will need to be made.
There's one area where high voltages are causing major headaches, and that's solar power.
Yes, it's turned out to be a bit of a white elephant in a sense. It cost me an arm and a leg to set up this system, and it's not performing.
Pensioner Paul Ryan installed solar panels more than a year ago. But for much of the time, the voltage on the grid near Paul Ryan's house runs too high, and that forces his solar system to shut down to protect itself. That's a common problem with home solar.
Operating or not, so the red light indicates that it's cutting in and out, and we're in full continuous sunlight.
So for those periods where the graph has just dropped out, does that mean your solar's not producing anything for that period of time?
That's right. It's obviously going to be collecting the energy from the sun, but it must just be dumping it.
His energy network says too many rooftop solar systems in the area are to blame.
Voltage issues are a reality of having a growing amount of solar, 2 million installations across the country, injecting back into the middle of the grid, in particular on sunny days.
Families like the Mastoroviches say they need a clearer picture of how much voltage affects their bills.
Every bill we have for everything this year really feels like it's increased. You really don't know. The bill turns up and you kind of, okay, I guess we have used that much, and you don't feel like there's a lot you can do to really find out exactly where that's occurred from.